What's going on, guys?
Today we're here to talk about the pros and cons of living in Melbourne.
We've only been living here for a few months, but we just want to talk about what we like and what we don't like about living in Melbourne.
So if you have any plans to live in Melbourne in the future, then this video should give you a bit of insight into what life is like. But first, I think we're going to start with the cons, just to get the negatives out of the way.
But we want to say before we begin that this is purely based on our opinions and our experiences. Yours might not be the same, but don't come fight us.
Positive vibes only here, please.
The first thing we want to talk about, I think most people who live in Melbourne would agree, is the weather.
Yeah, the weather is very unpredictable here. It kind of reminds us of the weather from back home in the UK.
Does it?
I think so. Just, it's unpredictable. Like 1 minute it's raining and then suddenly the sun's out.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to plan your days. Literally one day it'll be 30 degrees, 35 degrees, even the other week it was 40 degrees, and then a couple of days' time drops down to 20 and will be raining.
It's just hard to plan things based around the weather. The next thing we're going to talk about is the outdoorsy side of Melbourne.
And before you come and say that there's so much to do in Melbourne to do with outdoorsy stuff, we're not saying that. We're just saying that it's very stretched out, especially compared to other places, and you're going to need either a car or be willing to sit on public transport for quite a while to get to those places.
Yeah, don't get us wrong, there is some beaches here in Melbourne if you're just after a beach day, but if you're looking for, those beautiful like white sand beaches, blue waters that you picture when you picture of Australia, you have to travel quite far out of Melbourne, out of the bay to get to those.
And if nature's more your thing, then there's definitely places to go. There's Yarra Valley, Wilson's Prom, but like I said, you kind of need a car to get to those, and you're going to be driving an hour or two to get to them. There's definitely still places in Melbourne that you can see stuff like that, like the botanical gardens and other nice outdoorsy things, but we're just talking about the most beautiful things that you could be seeing. Whilst we're talking about having a car, the next negative we want to talk about is the driving in Melbourne.
Yeah, it's pretty stressful, especially when you've got a big camper van like us. There's trams in Melbourne pretty much everywhere. They take you in and out of the city, which is great, but driving behind them or in front of them is stressful when you've never done it before.
And we've seen a few other people talking about this. Coming from the UK, we'd never heard of it, about these hook turns, which, long story short, if you don't know what they are, imagine you're trying to turn right on a busy road, and if you want to turn right, you have to move your car over to the left in a little box and park there so the traffic can move past you, and then you got to turn right when it's free.
You basically wait your turn. It's very confusing, especially the first time.
If you don't know what it is, it's very confusing.
Yeah. And the last con that we want to talk about is, from our experience, it was really, really hard to find accommodation.
Yeah, this is probably going to be the same for most places in Australia, especially the cities, but we really struggled to find accommodation for an extended period of time, like a flat or a house to live in.
Yeah, we really struggled. We're currently subletting off someone and she got over 100 people applying for this flat. So we just got very lucky, and it was a very, very stressful time trying to find a flat to live in.
The demand to live in Melbourne is real.
And that leads us on to the positives, and spoiler alert, there's a lot of them. We've absolutely loved Melbourne.
Yeah, the first thing we want to talk about is the diversity of Melbourne. Because fun fact for you guys, about 50% of Victorians who are living in Melbourne were either born overseas or have one parent who were born overseas. So because of that, the different ethnicities and cultures that are in Melbourne is crazy high.
Yeah, you can really feel the different cultures, and it's so nice when you're walking around and you hear all these different accents, you hear all the different languages being spoken. It's just really, really nice.
Yeah, and because of that, I reckon it leads a lot of people to being quite open-minded about living in Melbourne. There's a lot less judgment around, and
just people are nice here.
And another thing is that we feel like Melbourne really celebrates these different kind of cultures and ethnicities. There's lots of different festivals. There's the Chinese New Year Festival, a Portuguese festival,
Latin festival.
Yeah, St. Patrick's Day. There's loads to celebrate here, which is so good.
Yeah, it feels like there's something different going on literally every single weekend here.
And that leads us on to our next section. Because of this diverse range of culture, the different types of food that you can get is so good, and Melbourne loves their food.
They do. Literally everywhere you walk around Melbourne, there's so many restaurants, cafes, like all the different types of cuisines, whatever you want, you would be able to find it, probably within walking distance.
Food in Melbourne is so good.
And not only is there a lot of it, it's all delicious.
Yeah, and can't talk about food without talking about drink. The bars here as well, there's so many different themed bars. The coffee, obviously Melbourne's so big for its coffee. No more needs to be said about that. The coffee in Melbourne's so good. And the breweries.
if you know us, you know we love a bit of craft beer.
And there's more breweries than I can name. There's so many in Melbourne.
And we've been to a lot of them.
There's a lot of good beer to be had in Melbourne.
There is.
The next bit we want to talk about is how much Melbourne loves and celebrates its art and sport.
Yeah, you really feel that when you're walking around the city. There's lots of these little alleyways and laneways that have all this graffiti everywhere, and every time you walk past it, there'll be something that's different on there. So it's nice. It's nice.
It's nice.
It's nice.
But if you're looking for something a bit more sophisticated, then there's loads of art galleries that you can go to. We went to one the other day and it was really beautiful. But as well, the sport in Melbourne, there's so much. There's the AFL, the footy, or the F1, the Australian Tennis Open.
You have to go to the Open.
And there's also a comedy festival starting soon.
Yeah, it just feels like I've said before, there's just so much going on.
Whatever you love.
Yeah, you will never be bored. This might be a bit of a boring point, but anyway, it's something that we've liked.
Has to be said.
Yeah, it has to be said, is the public transport here in Melbourne is actually really, really good.
Yeah, I feel like maybe it's a little bit controversial. I think a lot of people kind of dislike it, but in our experience, it's been pretty good. Once you kind of get into the outer suburbs, it's not as good. Like the buses and stuff can be quite hard to connect, but getting the tram is super easy, especially going into the city. Kind of seems like all the outer suburbs have a tram that goes into the city, and then once you're in the city, they're all free. All the trams are free.
Not really anywhere else you can say that.
No, you wouldn't get that in London, that's for sure. The last thing that we want to talk about why we love Melbourne is, even though it's a very busy city, a lot of people live here, it doesn't feel too chaotic when you're walking down the street. Especially coming from London, we lived there for a few years, and a lot of people that we know who don't like London, they say it just feels too much. They visit there and they just get too overwhelmed. All these people running around and there's just a lot going on, and yeah, we don't really get that about Melbourne, which is nice.
Yeah, and also when you're in the city, even though, don't get me wrong, there's all these big skyscrapers, I think they're a bit more spread out than other cities because they're kind of separated by all these really cute, I don't know, are they like
beautiful
French
architecture?
Yeah, like French or Italian architecture, like nice colourful buildings that they haven't like modernised, which is nice because it breaks up the city sort of feel.
Even a H&M is in some crazy nice architecture building in the city.
Yeah, and there's like different churches around that are all beautiful.
So that's been everything that we love and what we don't love about Melbourne. But we just want to say before we go that Melbourne has won the most livable city in the world quite a few years in a row, and it's actually still in the top 10 now.
And we can see why. We could definitely see ourselves living here. So if you live in Melbourne, or if you've lived in Melbourne before, let us know what you guys think, what you love and what you don't like about Melbourne.
What you're excited to see in Melbourne.
Yeah, or if you have any questions, let us know.
Yeah, but we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.